Hello, I'd like to talk to you about The Adventures of Pinocchio by Crl Clld. This is an 1883 work. Via Project Gutenberg, I read the 1926 translation by Crl Dll Ch. So yeah, Carlo Collodi, that's his pen name. It's Carlo Lorenzini, was born in 1826, died in 1890, and yes, published this book in 1883. And I have not read this kind of what's like a children's classic before. Back in my dim days of the past, I've watched the Disney, the beautiful Disney version of it, which is very much Disneyfied and is probably what most people know. But I came to this because I'm at the same time. At the same time, I read this in the middle of reading. I listened to someone do a retelling, kind of their spin on Pinocchio. In a way, I'll get to that when I actually review that. That's In the Lives of Puppets by T.L. Clune. But if there's anything that I can say of a compliment towards that book is that I went, hey, I've never actually read Pinocchio, and I'm pretty sure it's in the public domain. So why not go and read that? And I am so glad I did, because this is a pretty rich work. I think that in our modern era, whenever you put real in front of something, flags should come up. Like, what's a real woman? What's a real man? All that stuff. And when Pinocchio says he wants to be a real boy, and what Collodi prescribes, what the world of this book prescribes as how to become a real boy, that is really rich territory. And just the whole idea of what I would call the problem of young men, the problem of boys, is something that's obviously been kicking around for a while. This apparently is in the context of industrialization, where instead of you grew up on a farm and the whole thing of having like a childhood, it's like you went to work, you started working in the farm, and there was definitely kind of a disruption of society that happened around this time. This is also the unification of Italy. Collodi was a very political guy before going into children's literature. In some ways, it sounds like disillusioned by Italian politics. But this was a period where you have rapid industrialization, where a whole bunch of people are off the farm. You have people either leaving the farms, young men, kids leaving the farm and being kind of rootless and being a disruption, being trouble. And in this kind of a context, you have someone like Collodi kind of coming forward with, I'm going to write literature, definitely influenced by kind of fairy tales in general, to address what it is to be a real boy, to be a good boy, as it was. We have this figure of Pinocchio, who is a talking piece of wood, basically, at the beginning of this, that right from the beginning is making mischief. Geppetto, who is going to become his father, his maker, buys him from a kind of a wood guy who's making furniture and stuff like that. And the wood right from the beginning causes these two guys to just have a brawl. Fight each other. Kind of, there's that masculine energy again. But Geppetto takes him home, carves him into the animated marionette that he is. And first thing Pinocchio does, this is definitely way more hardcore than my memories of the Disney thing. I don't think it's a spoiler to say, right at the beginning of this book, Pinocchio murders the cricket. It's not Jiminy Cricket at this point. It's the cricket with a hammer. Is that the last of Pinocchio? Last of the cricket? I'll leave you to find out when you actually pick this book up. He gets strung up in a tree by the neck and hung nearly to death about halfway through this book, which apparently this was serialized to begin with, and you can tell this, and each chapter is very much its own little tale within the thing. You could see picking this up in a newspaper and reading it, or something, or whatever periodical, and reading the tale. But due to, and I think it was supposed to basically end with him dead, hung, just lynched in a tree. It does not end that way. Clld comes back with more tales, and I don't know how much they kind of, it's very much like, okay, he's dead, and then in the next chapter, it's like, oh, maybe he's not as dead as possible, as things go. But, this is a whole book of the problem of being a boy, of becoming a human being who lives in a society and isn't just horrible, awful, isn't just violent and complete id monster. It's like the process of how do you make a person, and it's it's interesting that it's how you make a boy. Probably there's a certain amount of sexism, of like women are just so ingrained with obedience and not given the space to be as violent and as disruptive and as sociopathic as we see little Pinocchio here. Little boys are sort of like, oh, boys will be boys, kind of that thing, which then as they grow up bigger and bigger becomes more and more of a problem, becomes the problem. And indeed, this book kind of continually says, like, basically the threat of, if you don't study, if you don't kind of obey, if you don't like care for your elders, you're going to end up in the hospital, you're going to end up in prison. That's very much an explicit threat that comes throughout this book. And later, in kind of like the more horrific things, we have the Land of the Toys, where he and a friend go, and where it's like all the boys are like, wow, this is the best place. You don't have to study at all, and every day is like a holiday, and it's like you just do whatever the hell you want, and it's great for about 5 months until they get donkey fever, and he and his friend starts off with ears, and then they turn into donkeys, and then they are beasts of burden. Pinocchio going into the circus. His friend, Longwick, his actual name is Romeo, but he's nicknamed Longwick, is sold to a farmer and is a beast of burden who is worked and beaten to death. And there's kind of it really almost kind of gives me that sense of how children, like how children can be swept up in a system, exploited in all sorts of really sorts of dark ways, and that it's like there's a real darkness and a real harshness to this world. Which is like, it's a fairy tale world, but it's also kind of a world of like, we're kind of you can see Clld is like talking to kids going, yeah, it's not all rainbows and lollipops, kids. If you do not make accommodations, this world will grab you, this world will grind you, this world will exploit you, this world is very harsh, and it's Pinocchio goes through kind of a surprising, well, I mean, it's not surprising. It's the kind of transformation that you're going to expect to see. He starts out as the most rotten, sociopathic little shit that you could ever think, and over the novel, he transforms, inner transformation before the external allegorical transformation into a real boy. There's some parts I wonder, I think the power of the book is, you wonder how much of this is, you say, oh, this is a horrible threat against young people, and saying, we're going to punish the shit out of you if you do not bend to our societal will. And how much of that is, there's kind of a caring feel to it, you need to learn how to be with people. You need to learn how to relate to other people. You need to be curious about the world. if you're not gonna, if the, I'm trying to protect you from the world versus be something that's a threat that says you will submit and be our slaves in the world. I think the donkey world, the Toyland, becoming a donkey is that kind of, is that like, look, there are forces, they're still very much with us, which will take your id, take your all your kind of just unrestrained, lazy desire, and will exploit that, and will exploit you, and you will be so screwed. So you need to kind of find somewhere else. This is a really, really rich book that way. And we have the, what is called in this translation, the azure haired fairy, the also the turquoise haired fairy, or the blue fairy of the book, of kind of more famous, like kind of a Disney kind of thing, which is kind of the maternal aspect of the book. Of Geppetto being the kind of the caring, indulgent, maybe overindulgent father. You have the azure haired fairy who is there, that maternal thing of like, there's sort of like the feminine is going to turn you into a real boy, which in some ways you could say, you look at that and think, oh, well, it's not going to turn you into like kind of macho kind of, I don't know, there's the whole kind of traditional masculine thing of, I'm going to make you strong. I'm going to make you, it's like, no, this is kind of this interesting that there's like a feminine in here that will help you become a real boy. In there, like a lot of the brutishness and stuff like that, that is actually just more that's your inside, that's your unrestrained, violent kind of uncaring side in there. But we're going to have a feminine that balances you out somehow, and helps you buckle down. And stuff like that. I mean, yes, there's a cricket in here who is sort of a conscience. I think it gets more developed by Disney. There's the cat and the fox, who are con men, who appear in different ways, and Pinocchio does not recognize them. How they exploit and toy with him, exploit his greed. There's this thing of like, oh, well, you've gotten this money. If you bury it in this field, great trees will sprout with tons and tons of coins on it. It's like, oh, okay. It's almost like, oh, we got crypto bros in this book. Crypto bros who find young men and exploit their desires, their greed, and say, give us your money and we'll give you way more money. And of course, like the crypto bros, they're not going to, I see a lot. It's striking how much, I see, in this book from 1883, how young boys are exploited by people, the cat and the fox, in the book. There's also kind of biblical sides of like getting swallowed by what is called the terrible shark, which is like, it's very much kind of a Jonah and the whale sort of thing. There's a lot of death, symbolic deaths and rebirths in this book, of like kind of a little of the journey, the kind of a hero's journey kind of thing of like, you go through something and you die, but you then are reborn. Pinocchio gets reborn a couple of ways, getting turned into a donkey and then kind of reborn back into marionette form, of getting hung, of various things like that. And just, his, spoiler alert for him, becoming a real boy at the end, that kind of a rebirth at the end, with just before it, a kind of this, kind of like a tender sacrifice. There is a kind of a native story of the little mouse who is asked for one of his eyes to help somebody, and he gives it, and then he's asked for his other eye, and he gives that, so he's completely blind. And it's this kind of like utter beautiful sacrifice that happens in this story that transforms him. And that this is definitely more of a secular one, because in the end, Pinocchio is rewarded with material wealth. So it's very much a kind of a secular success story, in that sense, for 1883 versus kind of a spiritual awakening. This is this is much more kind of secular. How to be a person in this industrialized dog eat dog world of ours right now. So yeah. If you've not read The Adventures of Pinocchio, it is a short book. I think it was like 228 pages in like the ebook version that I read. You can get it for free on Project Gutenberg. It's it's simple language. It's pretty full on. I don't know if you would read it to a kid nowadays. I have no idea. I do not have kids of my own, but the inner kid in me, the inner boy, the inner bad boy and inner good boy in me, really appreciate this book. And it was I thank you to the reteller, the person who foolishly decided to try and use this to kind of get a leg up. I don't know if they did, but that's for another review. For right now, The Adventures of Pinocchio by Crl Clld. Really enjoyed it. All right, I've been Jay. More videos later.